Well, the last time we saw Matthew Edgar walk out of a courthouse in Hemphill, Texas, he disappeared for 11 months. Today, in handcuffs and a bulletproof vest because he went before a judge finally to get his official sentencing. As we all know, he took off third day into his own murder trial in the death of 19-year-old Libby Lewis a year ago. It was January of last year. Where he's been over the last year, that's a question yet to be answered. Well, today, the family, Lewis's family, got some I guess, bittersweet closure to this entire event when he was sentenced to 99 years in prison. We'll have much more on his day in court coming up tonight at 10.
October 31st, 2020. The middle of the night in Sabine County, Texas. Around 5 in the morning, a passing driver turns onto Farm to Market Road 83, heading east out of the town of Hemphill. In the beam of her headlights, the outline of a white sedan appears on the shoulder. The car is completely still, but its headlights are on, and thick vapor rises from the exhaust pipe into the cold, pre-dawn air. The engine idles steadily, the only sound for miles around. The woman slows down, expecting to see a driver who needs help, but there is no movement inside the vehicle. As she gets closer, the witness notices that the driver's side window has been completely shattered. Sharp fragments are scattered across the asphalt, glinting under the headlights. Inside, slumped motionless in the driver's seat, is 19-year-old Libby Lewis. Her head is tilted unnaturally toward the steering wheel, and a deep wound is clearly visible on her neck. The woman does not step out of her car. She immediately calls the rescue service. At 5:15 a.m., the dispatcher logs the call. The voice on the line says, "There's someone dead here, and the engine is still running." At that moment, the witness notices another detail that makes the scene even more disturbing. Just inches behind the sedan's trunk, a dark pickup truck is parked. In the narrow space between the two vehicles, a human figure can be seen in the road dust. The person is not moving and does not try to call for help, despite the sound of the passing car. About 6 feet away, lying in the grass, is a long, narrow object, its metallic shine barely visible in the dim light before sunrise. It is a hook-like tool that raises more questions than answers. Who is this person? And why hasn't he left the scene of the crime? The first sheriff's unit arrives on FM 83 10 minutes later. Red and blue lights flood the area with a pulsing glow. Officers confirm that the driver of the sedan is dead, and their attention immediately shifts to the man lying between the vehicles. It is 24-year-old Matthew Hoyt Edgar. He is curled up in a fetal position, gripping his knees tightly with both arms. His clothes are dirty, he is breathing, but his eyes stare into empty space. He does not respond to police commands, does not resist when handcuffs are placed on his wrists, and does not say a single word, while paramedics examine Matthew for injuries and find none. Crime scene investigators begin documenting evidence. Their main focus becomes a .22 caliber rifle lying in the wet grass. The weapon is positioned as if it had simply been tossed aside. Police determine that the dark Chevrolet pickup belongs to one of Matthew's relatives, but Matthew had been using it throughout the night. The situation appears paradoxical. The suspect is found at the scene of the crime along with the weapon, yet he behaves as if he were nothing more than a man caught in circumstances he cannot explain. At Hemphill Hospital, where Matthew Hoyt Edgar is taken for detox and questioning, the silence is finally broken by his first statement. He claims that his memory is completely wiped after midnight. Matthew confirms that he had been at a party at Bobby Ozon's house, drank heavily, and says he only came to his senses when he was already in handcuffs. He insists it was a blackout, a gap in memory that keeps him from explaining how his rifle ended up in the grass and how he himself was found just inches away from the body of Libby Lewis. Investigators document every word, while at the same time sealing his clothes in evidence bags. Fresh stains are clearly visible on Edgar's jeans, and they do not look like dirt or spilled alcohol. The investigation moves into the stage of collecting physical evidence, and the findings begin to contradict Matthew's claim of a blackout. Ballistics testing establishes a direct link. The .22 caliber bullet removed from Livy's neck was fired from the exact rifle deputies found in the grass next to Matthew. The weapon is registered to Edgar himself. The idea that a random shooter could have appeared on a deserted rural road starts to fall apart. During the search of the Chevrolet pickup that the suspect had been driving, detectives make another important discovery. Livy's cell phone is found on the passenger seat. She had never been inside that truck, yet her personal belongings were in Matthew's possession. Another piece of the puzzle turns up at the home of Matthew's mother, Cindy Edgar. Sitting on the kitchen table are the keys to the white sedan that belonged to Livy. Investigators begin to reconstruct the sequence of events. Someone shut off Livy's car, took her keys and her phone, drove the keys to Cindy Edgar's house, and then returned to the scene of the crime. Laboratory analysis of Matthew's clothing confirms the officers' first suspicions. The dark stains on the fabric of his jeans turn out to be blood. DNA testing shows a 100% match to Libby Lewis. Matthew cannot explain how the victim's blood got onto his clothes, continuing to blame the loss of memory. Detectives also note that despite his claims of being heavily intoxicated, the actions of the offender appear deliberate. He systematically removed the victim's means of communication and her ability to start the car. Based on the evidence collected, the weapon, the blood on his clothing, and the victim's personal belongings, Matthew Hoyt Edgar is formally charged with the crime. He is taken into custody, while investigators continue examining digital data from the seized phones, trying to understand what brought the two of them to a deserted roadside at 5 in the morning. To understand the motive, detectives turn to the background of the victim. Libby Lewis was born on October 4, 2001, in Shreveport, Louisiana. Later, her family moved about 90 miles south to the small Texas town of Hemphill. She was a member of the Alabama Coushatta Choctaw Apache community of Ebarb, part of a native people whose history is deeply tied to this region. In the local community, Livy was known as a determined and active young woman. In 2019, Libby Lewis graduated from high school with honors. Instead of leaving for college right away, she decided to gain hands-on experience in the medical field. She completed certification and started working as a certified nursing assistant, a CNA, at the local medical center. Co-workers described Livy as reliable and hardworking, someone who regularly picked up extra shifts while preparing to enroll in a full nursing program. She was saving money for tuition and planning to move to a larger city to continue building her career. Life in Hemphill, a small Texas town with a population of just over 1,000, was quiet, predictable, and close-knit. Livy was part of a large family and maintained strong ties with members of her tribe. She had a reputation as the golden girl, someone people expected great things from. She had no record with law enforcement, did not use prohibited substances, and was never known to be involved in conflicts with people in town. But behind the image of a successful student and dedicated worker, there was a personal life that even close relatives knew little about. During her final year of high school, Livy crossed paths with someone whose reputation in Hemphill was the complete opposite of hers. That connection changed the direction of her life, leading her to postpone college and remain in the same town that would later become the place where the crime occurred. Matthew Hoyt Edgar was 5 years older than Livy. By the age of 24, he already had a substantial record with the local police department. In 2015, when he was 19, Edgar became involved in a case related to evading arrest. The pursuit ended in a crash that left people seriously injured. The court sentenced Matthew to 3 years in prison. In Hemphill, he had a reputation as someone who ignored rules and was prone to sudden bursts of uncontrolled aggression. At the time he met Livy, Matthew was legally married. His wife, Montana Bockel, was raising their son and daughter. Despite having a family, Matthew lived a restless lifestyle, frequently showing up at bars and private parties, where alcohol often became the trigger for more trouble with the law. Around town, he was known not only for his criminal past, but also for his unpredictable behavior. He changed jobs often, never staying anywhere for long, and remained under postojanny supervision from probation officers. The relationship between Matthew and Libby began in November 2019, and from the very start was kept secret. Investigators later obtained fragments of their messages from that period. In one of the earliest texts, Edgar directly warned her, "You understand you can't say a single word to anyone about us even talking." Libby, who had just turned 18 at the time, replied with a hint of sarcasm, "Obviously, I'm not going to brag about texting a married man." Despite this, Matthew's influence over Libby continued to grow. Under his pressure, she began to change her priorities. Her plans to leave for college right away were put on hold. Instead, she spent more and more time at Matthew's house, helping him care for his son and daughter, and becoming part of a strange arrangement where the line between his legal wife and his girlfriend slowly started to blur. This period of outward stability did not last long, only until Matthew's tendency toward aggression and infidelity began to show in full. The story of their relationship began about a year before the events on FM 83. In November 2019, 19-year-old Libby Lewis and 24-year-old Matthew Hoyt Edgar started exchanging messages that were meant to stay strictly secret. At the time, Edgar was legally married to Montana Bockel and raising their son and daughter. In one of the first conversations, Matthew directly told Libby not to tell anyone that they were even talking. She agreed, adding that she saw no reason to be proud of communicating with a married man. 4 months later, in early 2020, the tone of their conversations changed. Matthew began telling Libby openly that he was unhappy in his marriage and started asking to meet in person. At first, she kept her distance, writing that she was not ready to take on the role of someone who breaks up a family. But Matthew kept pushing for her attention, and by summer, the situation shifted completely. He announced that he had separated from his wife, and soon after that, Libby moved into his house. Instead of leaving town for school as she had planned, Libby became fully involved in Matthew's everyday life. She not only lived with him, but also took on much of the responsibility for caring for his son and daughter from his marriage with Montana. During this period, the relationship formed an unusual dynamic. Libby and Matthew's legal wife, Montana, did not just meet. They began spending time together and even maintained what looked like a friendly relationship. To people around them, it seemed as if the conflict had been resolved and that order had returned to the household. That balance lasted only a few months. Libby continued working as a nursing assistant, helped take care of Matthew's son and daughter, and shared the responsibilities of the home. But behind the image of a calm life in rural Texas, tensions were building that slowly began to break the relationship apart from the inside. Data later recovered from their phones showed that the so-called new order inside Edgar's house was built on strict control and quiet confrontation. Several months before the tragedy on the roadside, the relationship between Matthew and Libby entered a phase of open aggression. Investigators obtained text messages Libby had sent to him. In those messages, she directly asked why he kept using physical force against her. The texts described pain throughout her body and fear of Matthew's behavior when he was intoxicated. She also wrote about incidents where Matthew destroyed her personal belongings and left her alone on the side of the road late at night. The physical pressure was not the only problem. There were also signs of cheating. Libby learned that even after officially getting together with her, Matthew had resumed an intimate relationship with his former wife, Montana. Messages from that time show that Libby tried to break out of the cycle. She wrote to Edgar that she deserved better treatment and could no longer accept the way he lived. Despite those statements, she remained in Hemphill, sometimes returning to Matthew's house after yet another argument. Matthew's constant drinking became a regular trigger for conflict. In her messages, Libby often mentioned that she was afraid of his reactions when he was intoxicated. She described specific incidents when he got physical with her, leaving marks she later had to hide from coworkers at the medical center. The aggression became a pattern in their relationship, while threats and damage to her belongings turned into a way of keeping her close. In October 2020, Libby made the decision to end the relationship for good. She stopped hiding her plans to leave and began openly communicating with other people, which caused a sharp reaction from Matthew. The idea that Libby intended to start a life without him increased the tension between them. Tension that would reach its peak on the night of the Halloween celebration. Every step she took toward independence, Edgar seemed to take as a personal insult that demanded an immediate response. On October 30th, 2020, at around 10 p.m., a party began at the home of a local resident, Bobby Ozon. About 20 people were there, including Matthew Hoyt Edgar, his former wife Montana, and Libby Lewis. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as tense. Matthew was drinking heavily, while Libby tried to keep her distance from him. By around 2:30 in the morning, most of the guests had left, and only a small group remained in the house. The conflict started almost instantly when Libby said she wasn't going home with Matthew. She told him she planned to stay the night at Bobby Ozon's house instead. Hearing that, Edgar went into a state of uncontrolled rage. He began shouting insults at her, and the situation quickly turned physical. Bobby was forced to pin Matthew against the side of a vehicle, holding him there so Libby and Montana could get into their cars and drive away. Even while being restrained, Matthew kept yelling after them. Witnesses later recalled a direct threat. "I'll come after all of you." After Bobby let him go, Matthew did not calm down. He walked toward Montana's car, which was still parked nearby, and started kicking and hitting it, smashing a window and damaging the body of the vehicle. The outburst was so intense that no one else at the scene was willing to get close to him. Libby Lewis left the party first, driving away in her white sedan. Montana Bockel headed toward the home of Matthew's mother, Cindy Edgar, hoping to find safety there. Matthew Hoyt Edgar left Bobby Ozon's property shortly after. He got into his cousin's pickup truck and disappeared into the darkness. From that moment on, the events began to unfold quickly, moving from a private residence onto the rural back roads of Sabine County. After the chaos at Bobby Ozon's house, the situation shifted to the Edgar family property. Montana tried to take shelter at Cindy Edgar's home, but Matthew caught up with her in the driveway. A brief physical confrontation followed. Matthew struck her several times until she began honking the horn repeatedly, hoping the noise would wake someone nearby. The sound forced him to back off. Edgar retreated to his own house on the neighboring lot, but his aggression did not stop. It simply moved into text messages. At 3:22 a.m., he sent Montana a message directly blaming her for Libby's decision to leave him. The next 12 minutes would become critical for the entire investigation. At 3:34 a.m., Montana's phone vibrated again with a new text. The message from Matthew was cold and precise. "I'm home. I have Libby's keys and phone." When Montana asked where Libby was, the reply came back in a single word: "Dead." That short exchange effectively fixed the time of the crime. Matthew claimed he was at home, yet the only way he could have Libby's keys and phone was if he had already encountered her on the road and taken away her ability to leave or call for help. Investigators later reconstructed that short window of time. Libby had left the party heading toward home, her route taking her along FM 83. Matthew, driving a more powerful pickup, caught up with her on a deserted stretch of road. After the shot was fired, he acted with chilling control. He shut off her car, took the keys and her cell phone, then drove those items to his mother's house in an attempt to hide the trail. But after completing that loop, For reasons still unclear, he returned to the scene, parked behind her car, and stayed there until dawn while the engine of the white sedan continued running, slowly burning through the remaining fuel. After Matthew Hoyt Edgar was taken into custody, the legal process ran into an unexpected delay. The COVID-19 pandemic slowed down court operations across Texas, and the grand jury was unable to approve the indictment on time. Under state law, Matthew became eligible for release on bond, which was set at $50,000. The man accused in Libby Lewis's case walked free and returned to everyday life in Hemphill. It was not until the spring of 2021 that prosecutors formally filed charges, and the trial itself did not begin until January 2022. Matthew attended the hearings calmly, listening to ballistic reports and reading through the recovered text messages without showing any visible emotion. The turning point came on the fourth day of the trial, January 27th. Court officers and jurors took their seats, but the chair at the defense table remained empty. Matthew Hoyt Edgar had not simply missed the hearing, he had disappeared. Later, a few miles outside town, his electronic ankle monitor was found cut off and thrown into a roadside ditch. The judge made an unusual decision. The trial would continue without the defendant present. While state police launched a manhunt for Matthew, the courtroom moved forward with the final arguments about his guilt. That same evening, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty. But the decision was announced in a silent courtroom, with the defendant nowhere to be seen. For the family of Libby Lewis, the moment felt like a double blow. Justice had been declared on paper, yet the man responsible for the crime was once again free, and no one knew where he was. Federal marshals joined the search, understanding that in the forests of East Texas, someone with Matthew's experience could stay hidden for years. He became a ghost, and the empty chair in the courtroom turned into a symbol of a case that would remain unfinished for another 11 months. The search for Matthew lasted nearly a year. Law enforcement followed hundreds of tips about his possible location until the trail led them back to Sabine County. Information surfaced that the convicted man might be hiding in a private home located very close to his grandfather's property and not far from where his mother lived. On the night of December 29, 2022, a tactical team set up a quiet perimeter around the suspected house. Officers used night vision equipment, watching every entrance and exit. Around midnight, a man stepped onto the back porch. He lit a cigarette, and the brief flash from the lighter gave officers the confirmation they needed. It was Matthew. The team moved in immediately. He had no time to resist and was taken into custody on the spot. During the arrest, he asked the officers a single question: "So you still couldn't prove I was innocent?" Inside the house with Matthew was his mother, Cindy Hogan Edgar. She told police she did not know her son was there and claimed she was surprised to see him. However, investigators later concluded that she had helped him stay hidden for a long period of time. Several months later, in November 2023, Cindy Edgar was formally charged with helping a wanted offender avoid arrest. Matthew was transported under heavy guard to jail to await sentencing. On January 3, 2023, the court brought the case of Libby Lewis to its final point. Matthew Hoyt Edgar was sentenced to 99 years in prison. Under Texas law, he will not be eligible to request parole for at least 30 years. If he never receives early release, he would remain in prison until the year 2121, just days after what would be his 125th birthday. Members of Edgar's family tried to promote an alternative theory, claiming that the crime had been committed by a Mexican cartel in order to frame Matthew, but investigators found no evidence to support that claim. The final reconstruction of the events from the night of October 31st, 2020, based on the facts proven in court, looks like this. After the outburst of rage at the party, Matthew Hoyt Edgar tracked down Libby Lewis along FM 83. He used his pickup truck to block her car, forcing her to stop on the side of the road. Matthew fired a single shot from a .22 caliber rifle through the side window, striking Livy in the neck. After that, he took her phone and her keys, so she would not be able to call for help or drive away if the shot had not been fatal. After dropping the keys off at his mother's house, Matthew returned to the scene of the crime. His heavy intoxication kept him from leaving for good. Instead, he stayed on the roadside, where he was later found early that morning in a state of shock, barely responding to anything around him. Libby Lewis, who had dreamed of becoming a nurse and helping people, died at the scene from severe blood loss. Today, her name lives on through a memorial foundation created in her honor, while the man responsible for the crime will spend the rest of his life inside a prison cell only a few square yards in size.